that's the motto. Drop a few bills and pop a few champagne bottles. Throwing that money like you just won the lotto. We've been up all damn summer, making that bread and butter. Tell me did I just stutter? That's the motto. Drop a few bills and pop a few champagne bottles. Throwing that money like you just won the lotto. We've been up all damn summer, making that bread and butter. Tell me did I just stutter? That's the motto.
Hello and welcome to Loaded Mag, and we are doing another short this evening, and this is part 2 of the trilogy on left backs. You will probably have already seen our video on Bernard Souza, and this evening we are going to be talking about Kieran Tierney. Now, Kieran Tierney is a player that we had to speak about for this summer transfer window because this name will just not go away. As you can see here from this profile, Kieran Tierney is 25 years old. Some may say a great age. I don't know whether I'm fair to say that, boys.
Really?
It's more of a good age.
Good age. Yeah, good age.
I'd swap it now in the heartbeat.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah, true. Scottish international. What's 178 centimeters, guys? Maybe about 6 foot, would you say? Just under?
I have no idea.
5'11", 5'10", 5'11", probably.
Yeah, well, I'll find that out for you as well. You gabbing. But yeah.
He's taller than Trippier, put it that way.
He's taller than Trippier, yeah. We can comfortably say that. And of course, he's a left back for Arsenal. And he's not been getting much ball recently because obviously Arsenal brought in Zinchenko, who's predominantly been in the left back position for Arsenal this season. But Pete, I just want to, what I'll do is, mate, I will just whiz up here the 22-23 heat map for Kieran Tierney for his time in Arsenal. But what I'm going to do to make it a little bit fairer, and this is thanks to Rich for his prep, I'm going to put up the 21-22 heat map because that gives you a little bit more to work with, should we say. But first of all, what are your thoughts on Kieran Tierney? Do you think he's going to be a Newcastle player? Do you think he's a player that we're targeting? And how do you see him fitting in the team based on that heat map?
If you're asking me, is Kieran Tierney going to be a target for Newcastle? I have to say yes. And the reason being is because a lot of what he gives, or just in general, his situation is perfect for us. So obviously he's Scottish, so he's based from the north. He, as people may speculate, he wants to move back to the north or further north, away from London. So there's a lot of talk about that. And his credentials mean that he's the type of player that we're looking for. It's very clear that we're looking for another left back. As a player, I haven't got an issue with Kieran Tierney. I think he would be a terrific signing. There's only one thing that stops me, and you just put it up on the screen a second ago with his stats, and that is the lack of playing time, and the lack of playing time because of his injuries. That's the only thing that kind of puts me off this deal. I think a lot of all the Newcastle fans feel the same, is that 6 starts there, it's just not enough. It's just not enough for a left back that we want to be our first choice left back going forward. It's not enough. Now, what I will caveat that with is that actually his injury record this season hasn't been too bad. He just hasn't been able to get in the team for the reasons you said, Chris, is that Zinchenko's been the number one. Yeah. So he has just had a lot of time on the bench and not really played a lot of football. So, a lot of people have said, oh, he's always injured, and he has been in years gone by. But this season, probably more or less so than others, he has been available, but just not been kicking a ball, which is maybe the reason why he wants to move further north. But as a player, he is a talented boy, and look, no doubt we'll get into it in just a second.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more, mate. Couldn't agree more. Rich, I'm going to move on now to Kieran Tierney's attributes. So Kieran Tierney here, you can see, he's predominantly defensive. I think it would be fair to say. And when we look at his attributes compared to, say, the likes of Dan Burn, very, very, very similar, as you can see. I'm going to quickly whiz up Tierney versus Matty Target. Again, similar. And then we also have this is probably a more accurate reflection. These are the Tierney and Target comparisons from the 21-22 season. But what I wanted to focus on, Rich, is the Tierney versus Burn comparisons. So a couple of questions for you. So firstly, is there anything that stands out for you there, or anything that's particularly noticeable based on those stats? And also what I wanted to ask as an extra one is, if Kieran Tierney was to be, bought from Arsenal, how much would you be willing to pay, and how much do you think Arsenal would want for Kieran Tierney?
Well, I think if you look at the comparison between obviously Dan Burn and Kieran Tierney, bear in mind obviously that he's been our first choice left back this season. And obviously, hopefully you've watched the previous episode of the left back trilogy with Borna Sosa, where we briefly touched on how defensive Dan Burn is as a left back compared to Borna Sosa, whereas Kieran Tierney is more. He's probably a more of a out and out typical left back, I would say. He's an all rounder. As you can see there, he's not quite as defensive as Dan Burn, but he offers a little bit more going forward. And so he's probably that little bit of an upgrade on what you've got now. He's defensively sound. If you still wanted to play with Trippier bombing down the right-hand side, you've got reliable, fantastic cover there as well. But they also, because obviously we know he's better going forward and crossing. He's a fantastic crosser of the ball. That is one thing I will say for him. But obviously he doesn't get forward and do as much as, say, Trippier does. You've still got you've got a more of an attacking threat than Dan Burn if Tierney was to come in. But obviously, if you look back to the previous episode with Borna Sosa, I think you've actually got the comparison for that, haven't you?
Got it there for you, mate. Got it there for you.
You can see that going forward, and we'll see this over the whole trilogy. There isn't really that good an attacking left back compared to Borna Sosa, probably. Available this summer. That's probably the way to say it, because there is a fantastic attacking left backs out there, but none that probably on Newcastle's radar, and that would be a realistic target this window. So, if you want an out and out left back who's an upgrade on what you've got at the moment, Kieran Tierney is probably the one you want. If you want a really attacking, full on Kieran Trippier on the left hand side, then you're looking more towards Sosa. But regarding the final point where you said about price, I think if you look on the first slide that we'll put up on him on his general, it tells you when his contract up. I think there's still a couple of years left on these. Yeah. He's got 3 years left of his contract, and that's the problem when it comes to the price. For me, I wouldn't really want to be paying anywhere more than 25-30 million from tops. But because of that, he's still got 3 years left in his contract. Arsenal are going to want a premium for him, and they're probably going to be wanting to looking for more towards. You lads might disagree with this. I think they'd probably look anywhere between 40 and 50 million for him because of that 3-year contract. And for me, that's a big no-no. For how often he's played this year, his injury record over since the time at Arsenal as well. Do you really want to be putting that out there on someone? That amount for someone who's been that injury prone with that length of contract, their time in his contract, even though he's got the Premier League experience that Sosa hasn't got.
Could that be part of the negotiation, though? Is that because he hasn't played a lot of football, and because there are, even though he's not been injured as much this season, because there are still concerns there, do you not think that could potentially be within the market as a negotiation to bring it
could
down?
Be. What you could do is you could pay so much and then have it on a sliding scale. It could rise to so much depending on appearances. Like you do with younger players or whatever, or do you know what I mean? If you get an England cap or you get so many goals or whatever, then the price rises to this. It's a possibility. If you get so many appearances, say for example, if he gets, let's say, look at Sosa, was it 25 appearances, 28 appearances he's made for Stuttgart this season? If Tierney gets 28 appearances, as long as he's fit, if he gets 28 appearances and he plays them, then that's it. You pay, I don't know, 35. They get a 5 million bonus on it. Do you know what I mean, or whatever? Then possibly do that. But you can't be paying 40 to 50 million outlay straight away. In my head, it's just bad business sense.
Pete, I want to ask you a bit more, around Arsenal's strategy with Kieran Tierney, because we've seen that, Zinchenko is first choice going forward. I think he will be. Looks like a fantastic leader on the pitch, and I'm sure he is off the pitch as well. Do you think that there's any tactics in play from Arsenal in terms of Kieran Tierney seeing a bit more football towards the end of the season? Is that trying to put him in the shop window? And also what I'd like to ask you is, we've heard Richie give the comparison about Tierney, and this is Tierney and Burn, and then Tierney and Target. Do you think this is a big enough upgrade, given that we've obviously discussed Bernard Sosa? Is Tierney a big enough upgrade for you? And certainly at the price that Richie's mentioned, I think he's right to say Arsenal will probably want 40-50 million. Is that a deal? Do you think we'd be interested in, or do you think it would be at a much lower price?
I'll answer that one first, but great questions. I don't think it'll be in the 40-50 million. I don't, just because I don't think Arsenal will be able to command that sort of fee. I just don't think they would. I don't think there's any other team that would pay that sort of money for Kieran Tierney for the reasons that we've said. So I think, I think Richie might have mentioned it, it will be a certain fee, maybe 25 million rising to, based on appearances, based on achievements and trophies, and build from that. That's just my opinion on that. Arsenal tactics, of course, because we are now a threat for Arsenal, and they don't like selling to teams that are a threat. Are they more likely to sell to us? Yes, because as we've already seen from Arsenal to Man City, they've also traded with them too. So Arsenal are a team that actually would more likely trade with us than any other. So could there be a deal to be done? I believe there would. That's just my opinion off the back of that. Now, obviously, you put the comparisons up with Burn and Target. That I thought was really, really interesting. Obviously, we saw the very, very similar there to Dan Burn, and one or two noticeable differences with regards to Matty Target as well. Going back to Dan Burn, and let's face it, Dan Burn has had a great season this season. That he's done really, really well. But there are two things that Dan Burn doesn't do that Kieran Tierney does, and does well, that I think would provide an instant upgrade. And it might not show it on there, but I think in terms of in-play would make a massive difference. And the two things are the ability to carry the ball long distances up that left-hand side, the ability to control the ball and take it forward. A lot of teams position themselves to stop Dan Burn and press him high as soon as he receives the ball, because they know he's not comfortable with the ball at his feet. Kieran Tierney is. And Kieran Tierney is shown, even in the games this season and beyond, that he can travel with the ball long distances and feel comfortable with the ball. The second thing is his range of passing. His range of passing is considerably better than Dan Burn's. And that's another thing that lets us down, which is why a lot of the time that passing range isn't found on that left-hand side. And that's why they don't have the type of fluidity that we have with Kieran Trippier on the right-hand side, is because his passing range is not there. What we would add to that is a very similar way of playing. Now, would it mean better stats for Tierney? Definitely. But what it would mean is better productivity for the person that's playing on the left-hand side, whether it's Alan Maximin, whether it's Anthony Gordon, whether it's Alexander Isak, because you've got someone that's comfortable with the ball. So they're the two things that really stand out for me that I think could make a massive difference with Kieran Tierney being added to the team, even though he doesn't seem like on his stats that he's massively attacking or progressing. He can be in a team where he plays regularly and he's got the ability to do it with the type of team that we put out.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Boys, I'm going to ask you one very quick question. I just want a one-word answer. Is Kieran Tierney going to be a Newcastle United player come the start of the season? I'll answer first, and I'm going to say no. Pete?
I'm going to do a Keith roll, and I'm going to sit right on the fence and say,
Splinter.
To be continued. To be continued. That's what I'm going to say.
I'll follow Pete and put it with a one-word answer. Potentially.
Ooh.
There you go.
Right, guys, it's been brilliant. Everyone, keep a lookout for part 3 of the Left Back trilogy. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. Don't forget, our super chats are open. Make sure that you put in your comments. Even though this isn't live, we will still endeavour to get back to you on those comments. Massive, massive thank you for the support as always, and look forward to seeing you all live very, very soon. For now, I think it's time for the how.